Hi, so let's speak a little bit about how you can visualize temporal data using Tableau. So we have seen already how to visualize temporal data using D3 and Vegalite and Altair. What about Tableau? So we're going to be using the same data set that I have been using. In this case is my list of tweets that I downloaded from my Twitter account. And then as you can see, in this case, this is the notebook that I created for doing the visualizations using Vegalite. And then, as you can see, we created a bunch of heat maps and some timelines. And if you go down here, the reason why we're starting in here is that I'm going to get the data out of here. So if you don't know yet, there is a very nice option in Observable where you can click on a cell that contains some data. And then you can click in there and just say download JSON, for instance. So I have already downloaded that. And I have I'm going to open Tableau because I thought I had it open, but it seems like I don't. And then let me get the file that I have in here. So in this case, this data contains some nested structures. So because of that, it's downloading that as a JSON file, which is a file that Tableau doesn't like that much, but they added like a couple years ago, like around 2018, some features for that. So when you drag a file like this, like Tableau is going to ask you to select the schema for it. And what that means is that if you need to choose what are the different elements that you want to parse. In this case, I have extended entities, and things like that. And in here, you have things like hashtags. But we don't want to include that in the analysis because that will duplicate our entries. So if one tweet has 4 hashtags, then it's going to create 4 rows in our calculations, and then you have to take that into account when you're doing the counts. So when you come in here, like our date is going to come in here in this created add attribute. Tableau is kind of weird with these dates, like up to this last version that I'm using in here. It didn't used to parse to be able to parse that. So I actually had in here a small sheet that it took me a while to figure out what was the formatting in Tableau for parsing that. But it seems that if you just change that now here, it is actually parsing that. And if you saw the video for D3, remember that all of these dates from the tweets are in UTC time. So one of the nice features that Tableau is doing is that it's translating that to my local time zone, to Colombian time in this case, where I'm recording this. So that is something that is very important to keep in mind when working with time. It's like, what is the time zone that you're using, especially with data from the internet, because usually it's going to be in UTC. Now, to get started, when you add your datetime parameter, usually what Tableau is going to do is that it's going to start doing date part aggregations, in this case aggregating by year, for instance. And if I add the number of elements, and let's put that here, for instance, in the rows, then you can see how many tweets I have made during the years. You can see that I have been, like my peak was around 2017, and then I started tweeting a little bit less. And in 2020, I have a very low number, as you can see, but the year is not over yet. So the other thing that you can do is that you see this plus sign in here. So a lot of my students, I always go and start adding like this. And what Tableau starts doing with that is that it starts treating all of those elements as date parts, and it creates these unconnected charts that I hate. So instead of doing that, what I recommend you doing, it's like get rid of those by doing this. And then if you right click in here, you will get 2 options. These are the ones where you can do date parts. Remember, this is extracting, for instance, the day of out of the month. So you get 1 to 31. And that is different from selecting, for instance, this one in here. That is the day, including the year and the month. So now you can see that the date I tweeted the most was December the 10th, probably during a conference or something like that. For this to make a little bit more sense, so we can go like all the way to the week number, which is not that common to have that feature, or 2 months, and then now we have something a little more meaningful. So then you can put a name to this. So let's say like timeline tweets per month, I think is what I did in there. So let's now create another one. And then the other one that I really like creating, and it's very easy to create as well on Tableau, is a heat map to try to identify like hot areas. Like in this case, I want to know when is my best time for retweeting. So one of the things you can do is that you add the time twice, as you just did in there, and then you select how do you want to group by. In this case, it's aggregating by year, but I want to see what is the hour that where I tweet the most. And then let's say in here, for instance, that I say want to see the day of the week. Let's flip that because this one will fit better in the screen. And then I'm going to take, for instance, the retweet count and put that on the color. So just by doing that, you get a heat map that is telling me that during this day, we actually, and I actually added retweet count, which is what I'm going to be doing in a minute. But for the moment, let's start with the number of records. So now this is showing me that this, like on Tuesdays at 11 a.m., I'm actually tweeting a lot. So again, one of the things that is reflecting this, when you look at the data in the original time zone, that is UTC, you're going to see that actually this shows up like at 6 a.m. because like it's UTC is 5 hours behind my time zone. So Tableau is doing that for us, so that is very nice. So let's say this is a heat map of number of tweets. And then like the other one that I wanted to create, that is the one that I did by accident. It's like if I drag this in here, like retweet count, I can even come and change, for instance, the color just to make sure that I know it's a different thing. So this is telling me when I'm getting more retweets. So actually this one it's telling me that I have 291 retweets at 4 p.m. on Sundays, which is really weird. And the reason for that is that I'm still using the sum aggregation. So the number of tweets, I want to add them up by summing them up. But these ones I actually should be using something like the average or the median. And for instance, with the average, you have the advantage of not succumbing or working better with all the data. Like actually in this case, like if you look at the number of retweets that I get, you will find a very interesting pattern. So for the moment, let's start number of retweets. So if you see these two, like this one is way more informative. In here, you don't see that much variation. So actually you have two very strong points. And then other than that, everything is very plain. If you start looking more about that, then you can, for instance, take the number of retweets. And then you can create a histogram in here. You just go and create and then say bins. I'm going to create this one. And then that creates a new attribute that I can use for binning my tweets, and then say the number of records in here. So when you do that, then you see that this is a very skewed distribution where most of my tweets are on 0. So because of that is that I'm getting something like this. So one of the things I can do is that I can say I want to filter by the number of retweets. So I'm going to do a right click in here and say show filter. And then here I can say I want to see only the things that have more than 1 retweet. But that still doesn't look good. And again, the reason for that is that it's summing up the retweets. So it's using the sum of the retweets when I actually want to filter on the original retweets. So if you right click in here, you will find that I have like 2 other options, maybe not aggregating, but using the attribute or the dimension. If you go into the dimension, that's the one that worked for me. I can do this. For some reason, when I do that, it stops showing the filter. So let's say show the filter again. And then I can now filter by this and also get rid of the tweets that are the most successful because I don't have that many of those. So let's say maybe tweets that got less than 50. And now this starts becoming a little bit more informative. And if you want to start working with these ones, then you can see how those things change. So the other one that it's that is important to keep in mind in there, let's duplicate this, is that maybe you should be using like median. Now that I got rid of the zeros, now like this, it's not going to be affected as much with those because otherwise like everything is going to be around 0. But now, for instance, everything is around 1. So you have to have a balance in that. So again, to wrap up, Tableau is very good for analyzing time. It did that change of the time zone for us. You have like all the date part and the date truncate options in there, and it has this nice aggregation, so it will show you interesting information right away. You just have to be careful that you're actually looking at what you're expecting to be looking, so you can draw the right conclusions. And one of the nicest things about this is that if you just come in here and say, well, this is interesting that I'm getting that many tweets. So you can go and analyze all the full data. In this case, you can see that I only have like 3 tweets during that time. And you should be able even to see like the number of retweets that, or sorry, the actual tweet that I got in there, and try to see if it is actually, if it effectively happened at 4 a.m., which probably I was on a different time zone, and that's why I was getting that. So hope you like that, and you do a lot of visualizations and temporal data on Tableau.